On my last countdown video, I briefly stated at the beginning that Sonic music is a pretty important part of the games. But why is that? Well, for starters, it's the music that the player is going to be listening to for the duration of literally the entire game, so I'd say it's a pretty big deal. I mean, we're blessed that the people that work at Sega or any other game company put so much work and effort into the game's soundtracks. Otherwise, instead of hearing this, we'd probably be hearing things like this. Also, I like to think of the music of any video game as kind of that game's voice without words.
Especially nowadays because Sega doesn't apparently like vocal themes anymore.
What I mean by voice without words is it's the one main way of expressing what the game is through the auditory senses, aside from the occasional sound effect, piece of dialogue, or something of that nature. Don't get me wrong, both of those are important too, especially the latter in a lot of cases. However, music in my mind is an essential part of video games that shouldn't be taken for granted, whereas the need for dialogue can be debated until the cows come home. So since last time I counted down individual Sonic songs, today I'll be broadening that by a lot as I count down my top 10 favorite official Sonic soundtracks. Keyword there being official. And what I mean by that is I'm counting down soundtracks that were physically released in some way, you know, like CDs you can actually pick up and touch and stuff like that. So you won't be seeing things like Sonic Advance or Sonic Battle that never got officially released soundtracks. Well, you probably wouldn't be seeing Sonic Battle here anyway. I mean, that soundtrack isn't good. So without any further fucking around, let's begin. Sonic Colors is one of the only big Sonic games I still have not played, but as I've said multiple times, you don't need to play the game to listen to the music. When the game first came out, and even to this day, the soundtrack accompanying it has gotten a lot of attention and regarded as a pretty good score in the eyes of many gamers and Sonic fans alike. In my opinion, yeah, it's good, but I don't know, a lot of the music for the levels seem kind of, what's the word, cheesy maybe? There might be a better word to describe it, but for now I'll stick with that. I've also heard a lot of them overplayed on Sonic videos, but regardless, there's some factor about it that keeps me from liking them as much as I would otherwise. There's a good amount of tracks that stick out, such as all the music from Asteroid Coaster, a majority of the cutscene music, and I've already sung the praises of Speak With Your Heart. Regardless of what I think of some tracks, it does a very good job creating a specific tone for the game, and makes it a pretty awesome soundtrack. This compilation album that was released back in the beginning of 2008 throws some of the best Sonic music and 2 new remixes together onto one disc. That being said, it does contain the American Sonic X theme, so I'm gonna try to not hold that against it. However, on the bright side, it does contain such hits as Live and Learn, Super Sonic Racing, Race to Win, Sonic Heroes, an original and an awesome new remix of Open Your Heart, and about 15 more songs. I believe it's the only soundtrack to feature the Super Smash Bros. Brawl remix of Angel Island, which is a huge plus. I chose this one over the second best of album, True Colors, because while that one does contain yet another great remix of Open Your Heart, I find the collection of songs as a whole better on the first volume. I do recommend checking both of them out though, seeing as they each contain some of the best music in Sonic history. Say what you will about Sonic 06 as a game. Terrible controls? Of course. Abysmal glitches that pretty much break the game? Absolutely. gross dialogue and voice acting, and questionable aspects about the story, couldn't agree more. But if there's one good part, one thing that this game brought us that didn't make the whole Sonic fanbase cry salty, salty tears, it's the soundtrack. This game had some great music, and most people would agree with that statement. From the actual level background music to the characters' main themes to the beautiful sounding cutscene music to hear in between, this soundtrack has something for everyone. If you haven't listened to it because you were turned off by the fact that it's the album for Sonic 06, I highly recommend you do so. It's unlikely that you'll regret it. Can I just take a moment to say how underrated this game's soundtrack is? I can? Good. This game's soundtrack is underrated! I love Sonic Rush as a whole. I think it's a great handheld game and a worthy successor to Sonic Advance. Plus, it has some really cool and different sounding music to boot. And I think this is partially thanks to the composers pulling a Daft Punk and sampling some audio from other sources. I'm also a fan of how Sonic gets his own tracks while Blaze gets remixes of those tracks. I'm a sucker for songs getting different versions like that. An interesting side note about this album, the first 7 tracks are the original compositions of some of the songs, while the tracks that follow are all the music from the actual DS game. This means that in the first 7 tracks, it's much easier to hear the instruments that were used in each of them, which is a really nice addition to this album as a whole. Remember when Sonic games not only had vocal themes, but enough of them to produce their own fucking albums? Well, I do, and this is the one that spawned from Sonic Heroes. It's actually kind of funny. When I was putting this list together, I had both this album and the Sonic Adventure vocal theme album as their own separate entries on the list. And then I remembered that this particular soundtrack features not only all the vocal themes from Sonic Heroes, but it also pretty much just took the Sonic Adventure album's Songs with Attitude and slapped it on for shits and giggles, effectively making this album also include Open Your Heart and the theme for Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Big. That being said, this makes this all the more awesome and a great collection of vocal themes. Kind of strange how they would include Sonic Heroes and Adventure music together and not Sonic Adventure 2, but hey, I'm not complaining. It's a great collection of vocal themes, so if you don't already know all of them, which you probably do, I'd say give this a full listen. I find this one particularly cool and interesting because even though it was recently released in 2011, it's the only official soundtrack to contain all the music from both Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and its sequel. What adds to the cool factor is that while the first disc is all the music from both games, the second disc contains all the original demo versions of the music by the original composer Masato Nakamura, before all the songs were converted into the Genesis sound format. I just think it's awesome to have a concrete collection of the music from Sonic 1 and 2, and it really makes me wonder why we never got an actual soundtrack from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, or if we'll ever get one. Either way, you gotta pay some respect to the classics, and this release is a great way to do so.
Yeah.
Sonic Generations was basically Sega going, hey, why don't we just, give everyone, fucking all the fan service? And that's exactly what they did. From recreating levels we all love and being able to play as classic Sonic again, this game was truly worthy of representing Sonic's 20th anniversary. And one of the best parts about it
had an amazing soundtrack!
We got classic and modern remixes for every level's music, then the music for bosses was remixed like Stardust Speedway and Open Your Heart, and just so much more. And it even gave us both the console and the 3DS music. It's like, bam! Disc 1, consoles. Disc 2, 3DS. Disc 3,
everything else!
I can see it now, Jun Sonoy in the recording booth like, hey, remember all that music I made that one time?
Well, I made it better, motherfucker!
And it wasn't only him, they got a bunch of people that had worked on Sonic music over the years, like Richard Jacques, Tomoya Otani, Cash, Naofumi Hataya, Kenichi Tokoi, and a bunch more great names when it comes to the vast library of Sonic music. If you've lived under a rock since November 2011, I highly recommend you listen to this great collection of remixes. Sonic Adventure sure was a game of firsts, wasn't it? First 3D Sonic game? Check. First game with real dialogue? Check. First Sonic game with aquarium on airship? Check. That being said, it was also the first game where Jun Sonoy was sound director. He had already started making music for the games in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and then later the Genesis version of 3D Blast, but it wasn't until the good old Dreamcast launch title where we not only heard much more of his stuff, but also got to hear the other frontman of Crush 40, Johnny Gioeli's voice for the first time in a Sonic game. And you already know how much I love Open Your Heart. Along with Sonoy as sound director also came Sonic's more rock-feeling style of music, something that would last a good number of games to come, and my personal favorite sound for the franchise as a whole. One really good touch for this soundtrack overall was the number of different songs for each level individually. Some levels got 2 or even as many as 3 different songs to accompany each environment they housed, and that, along with many other aspects, makes this soundtrack a serious ass-kicker. If I could describe the soundtrack to Sonic Unleashed with only one word, it would probably either be beautiful or diverse. The game's score greatly complements the fact that Sonic's traveling all over the world in the game, as most of the environment's themes take great inspiration from the real-life counterparts of these areas. From the Italian-sounding Spagonia hub music to the more Asian-inspired Chunan, all places in the game seem to be greatly represented music-wise. The game's orchestral theme is absolutely beautiful, and I love that it makes its way into a lot of different tracks on this album, whether it be as a whole or in pieces. This kind of makes the whole experience of the game cinematic, if you know what I mean. Giving all of the night levels a jazz sound to them was a fantastic idea, and I think it works with the Werehog magnificently, especially the battle theme, even though it does get a little repetitive sometimes, I'm not gonna lie. Top this all off with the emotional Dear My Friend ending theme and one of the best vocal themes in the Sonic library, Endless Possibility, and you've got my second favorite Sonic soundtrack for my second favorite Sonic game. Before we hit number 1, I'm going to go through a list of 5 honorable mentions that I did like, but just didn't make the cut for the list.
Somewhere in
Sonic Adventure 2 is not only my favorite Sonic game, but it's also accompanied by my favorite soundtrack for a Sonic game, hence the #1 position. What makes it so great? Well, a couple things actually. First of all, I love how each character's stages get their own kind of sound to each of their music. It might not seem like that big of a deal, but having a slightly different musical genre for each character makes for a better gameplay experience in my opinion. And hey, if you don't like one style of music, there are 5 different ones waiting for you to jam out to. Second, while I can't remember which adventure game I played first, I definitely remember playing SA2 more, and subsequently the music has a ton of nostalgic value to me. I started playing on my brother's Dreamcast, and then years later I picked up a second-hand Dreamcast off eBay along with SA2, which I still have to this day. Also, when I was younger, one of my friends lived about an hour and a half away, so whenever I got the chance I would sleep over for the entire weekend, and this game alone took up a lot of that time. I don't think this soundtrack has a single bad song in it. Whether it be the level, boss, cutscene, or Chow music, it's all great. Hell, even the Knuckles raps are pretty good. Make fun of them all you want, but I think they have some pretty good beats and some alright lyrics too. A little cheesy though. I also really like the use of guitars in this album. Even though a bunch of Sonic soundtracks utilize the instrument, I really think they sound great on this one in particular, especially on some of the tracks like Won't Stop Just Go for Green Forest, or That's the Way I Like It for Metal Harbor, just to name a couple. Also, this gave us 2 great fan favorites, Escape from the City and Live and Learn. Best album! Good job, Jun Sonoy, you done it again! Thanks so much for watching my countdown. If you're interested, you can check out the one I did last time where I counted down my top 15 favorite vocal Sonic songs. Click the annotation on the screen to be taken to that. If you want, you can like and favorite this video, and hey, you could even subscribe to my channel. I don't know, it's not forced to or anything, but you know, why not? Have a good day.